Right, you're welcome back. We're talking about the National Development Conference, which was hosted by the Church of Pentecost in Gumwafete. Almost all of Ghana's prominent political leaders, including previous presidents, were there. And as a result of this conclave, we now have a 10-point action plan, a communique to Action 10 agreed points. We're discussing this with our two guests, Professor Abu Sakara Foster, former presidential candidate for the CPP, and Raymond Ablo, a communications specialist and journalist. Mr. Ablo, I'm hoping you can hear me this time because I'm keen to hear your answer to this question about whether indeed we can expect this 10-point communique to actually be implemented. Will there be action after the talk?
That's a very important question. Thank you very much. Let me say before that I commend the Pentecost Church for this particular effort. But as to whether the communique can be implemented, one cannot tell because we've had several things done this way and nothing seems to be working. First and foremost, I don't want to believe that we don't have a national vision. We already have we don't have a vision in terms of moral vision. We have a moral vision as a country already. But the question is, what is that vision? And then why are we not able to attain that vision? If you look at our national anthem, and then you look at the pledge, you realize that we have a national vision, a moral vision as a nation. The values that define the moral vision are what are in the pledge and the national anthem. That we need to be selfless, we need to be loyal to our country, faithful to our country, render service, discipline. All these things are in it there. And do we need a communique to go establish a body somewhere to appreciate these values which are there? No, we don't. Like Dr. Sakara said, in the First Republic, when Nkrumah established the young pioneers, fine, we may have issues with Nkrumah and his not young pioneers, but the values Nkrumah established are the very values which are in the pledge and the national anthem. Now, John Kufuor came up with the national orientation, and the national orientation contains the same values which Nkrumah picked for the young pioneers, which are in the national anthem and national pledge. The question is this: if we all agree that the national moral vision that we have are supposed to be defined by loyalty to the nation, selflessness to the nation, with service to the nation, faithfulness, discipline. If we all agree, the question is, why is it that we have not been able to attain it? And what is made it difficult for us to attain it? How have we dealt with it to be sure that these 10-point communique will be effectively implemented to achieve what we could have achieved if we just worked on what we already have? That is what is the most important question. And here let me state emphatically that even though we have a vision, we have a moral vision as a country, what we lack is a leadership. The leadership to ensure that that vision is attained. We don't have that leadership. When I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about just political leadership. I'm talking about leadership at all levels. When you look at our traditional leadership, look at the religious leadership, you look at the political leadership, and you look at the business leadership, the academia. When you look at our leadership, we don't have that leadership that is committed to ensuring that the moral vision of this nation is achieved. None of our leaders from all across board, none of them has demonstrated the needed capacity to ensure that the vision, as in our moral vision, is achieved. None of them, none can come up and say that they have demonstrated the embodiment of the values of selflessness, the value of loyalty to these states and the country, the value of discipline and power, integrity. They have not demonstrated it. And what is more painful, or what is even more serious, is that the institutions which are supposed to even lead in defining the values and the moral vision of this nation, the institutions themselves need help. They themselves need to be saved. Because the major institutions are the traditional chieftaincy institution and the religious institutions. Now tell me, we all know that these leaders are members of churches and mosques. These leaders we have are members of the churches and the mosques. The businesses that are caught in scandals, the owners of those businesses, many of them are members of the churches and the mosque, and they are members, some of them are even elders in churches. So if the church themselves cannot ensure that their members are living the Christ-like life of the values which we have in the national anthem and the national pledge, how sure are we that establishing a committee somewhere or establishing a body called integrity body it will be capable of doing it? These churches are there. Even when you look at the leadership of the churches, the religious bodies, if you look at them critically, and then you look at their actions and their inactions, you will come to understand why the moral value of this nation we've been talking about all these years, we are unable to attain it. They themselves don't have the embodiment of the values. Look at the National Cathedral, for instance. You have a National Cathedral which is being established on foundations of lies and inconsistencies. Now, the members who are the members of the trustees, they are members of the church, they are elders, they are bishops, they are archbishops. Reverend Kusi Boateng, who is also known as Kwabena Dudimfi, is a church leader and is part of those who are supposed to help in shaping the values of this country in terms of the moral values, the moral values and the moral vision of this country. They are supposed to even help the politicians and the other members who are in other areas to be able to move according to the plans that may have been set to ensure the attainment of the moral vision of the country. And here they are on the corridors of power, seeking to unite with the politicians, the corrupt politicians, instead of uniting with divinity and ensuring that the values which we are supposed to see, the values which we are supposed to inculcate in the institutions, in our children, are done. They are not doing it. They are competing rather on the corridors of power and fighting among themselves as to who is clever or who is more closer to who in the arena of power. So you see that religious institutions themselves have failed themselves, and they have failed the entire nation. The chiefs have failed us too, because they are the custodians of our values. Today we are talking about LGBTQ, and we have to ensure that we go by what? Our sexual orientation, whatever thing. But the question is, the values that we are supposed to show of integrity, are they not part of our values? We are so corrupt that even we know the chiefs and those people who are supposed to ensure that there's no galamsey, they are part of it all. So forming a group or having an association or forming a body and calling it integrity, whatever, and that they are going to ensure we communicate. We need leadership that is the embodiment of the values that define our moral vision as a country. The leadership that is committed to ensuring that these values are very well inculcated in the institutions, their appointees, and in the citizenry at large. We need leaders who will not tell us to fix ourselves when they themselves are not fixed, but they will fix themselves and exhibit the character and attitude that will help us to fix ourselves. So this is where we are. We've got to a point where there is nothing like good and bad in this country anymore. Good and bad is dependent on who is in government and who is your friend. And in such a situation, we are acting as if now we need 10-point communique to determine or to define what our value or our what we are now calling our moral vision. But we already have a moral vision. We already have a moral vision. We all know it, but we are not working according to it because we are now thinking more about ourselves. Today, even though the pledge and the national anthem advises or urges us to be to be honest, if you are honest in this country, you are in trouble. In other words, to be fearlessly honest in this country is a sign that you must be dealt with. The people who are honest are dealt with. That is how come Domelevu was dealt with.
If I may ask you, I mean, is it not fair to say that anything that is repeated, that we are constantly exposed to, becomes a part of us? So if indeed we are recognizing a moral deficit, is it a bad plan to actually implement programs that will inculcate the ideas, blast it over our media, and ensure that things that we should already know become more accessible and more commonplace to us?
We don't need to establish any new. We don't need to establish any new organization or even do any new 10-point communique. We already know what we need. We have a body that is established there. that is being paid. People are being paid to provide education, civic education in this country. We have the body that is paid. People are paid every time to ensure. So what are they going to do differently that the civic education body, when resource cannot do it? Well, what are they going to do? That when the civic education body is resourced, they cannot do.
Let me bring in Dr. Sakara Foster. Now, Doc, I want to ask you a specific question. Let me ask the question, and then once you've answered it, you can add your point as well. So one of the items on the communique is the establishment of a National Moral and Integrity Council, NMIC, they've given it an abbreviation already, with the stature like that of the Peace Council to begin a process of restoration of generations of decay and moral decadence that Ghana has experienced over the years. Now, my question is, they are seeking to create something along the lines of the Peace Council. Bearing in mind that in spite of the existence of the Peace Council, Ghana has been falling steadily on the Global Peace Index. Have they got the right idea, trying to set up another institution?
First of all, let me take one step back before I answer that question. My young son, Raymond, has been very passionate in speaking to the issue, but let us take this as a cry for help. Let's not take this as what do you call it? A blanket solution to the entire problem. Let's take it as a realization and a cry for help that if nothing is done, things will get even worse than they are now. If we take it as such, then the next step is to ask the question that you are asking now. Are these institutional mechanisms that we're putting up, are they the right ones to solve that? Then we have to look at what is already there. As you mentioned, you have the Peace Council, but even more importantly, you have Shiraj, and it has now got prosecutory powers where certain things are reported to it, it can go after it. You have the Office of the Special Prosecutor, but then again, what is the problem underpinning the inability of these existing institutions to work effectively? And it comes back to the independence of constitutional bodies that are supposed to be independent bodies. The fact that they are appointed by the president, the fact that they work under the purview of the existing incumbent government, the fact that they decide what is prosecuted and what is not prosecuted. These are legislative issues in our constitution where we need to put in corrective measures to curb the excesses and abuse of power so that it manifests itself in this way. No amount of praying elsewhere and moral committees will do what legislation itself should do. And that is what we need to be very clear about. The Moral Council, the Integrity Council will seek to highlight these things and put them in our curriculum and, try and promote them in a way which counters the massive information inflow that is coming in through internet and phones, etc., and taking the minds of our children elsewhere. We need something that will counterbalance them. But at the bottom line is that the main volcano, which is fomenting all of these things, comes from our partisan political system, which dominates what should be the national interest. And until we redefine that democracy for ourselves and put it in check and make sure that the excesses at the presidency are put in check, the balance of power between institutions are put in check, the freedom to appoint people all over the place are put in check, you can do all the things you're talking about. Until you check those things, what we see will continue to happen, because what is happening now are overgrown partisan interests which are now manifesting themselves on the national scene to dictate the course of events, irrespective of what the Constitution says, irrespective of what the institutions have been put in place are supposed to do, irrespective of the independence of independent constitutional bodies. So this is the issue. We have to be very clear in our minds to separate moral issues away from legislative issues that we can legislate against. There are certain principles embedded in our constitution that give force to laws for us to legislate, to reflect our value system. But morality per se, we cannot legislate against it, and therefore we cannot enforce it, because we're not a theocracy, we're a democracy. In a theocracy, you can do that. If we live in a Sharia law country and somebody wears their skirt too short, you can call them and whip them and put a cloth over them. Not that that is right, but that is what that kind of system allows you to do. But in a democracy as we have it now, it's a laid down procedure by which government is supposed to pursue the welfare and common good of all of us. But it has found that the lion called partisanship has devoured its interests and is now pursuing the interests of a few. And more importantly, it is even corrupting the very institutions themselves in order that it can do that. If we don't recognize that, we will never be able to solve the problem. And I always put it in very simple terms for everybody to understand. If you're locked in a room and there's a badly behaved dog there and you have a stick, you can control it. But if suddenly they let a lion in that room, that stick is going to be useless. And that is what partisanship has become. It has become something that has eaten all the check systems against the judiciary, against the legislator. It has consumed all their independence and swallowed it in itself. And now, whatever it dictates is what goes on. And this is what we must seek to correct, and that is not a substitute. Talking about morality is not a substitute for that correction.
Help, though. Will talking about morality help?
Oh, of course. I have said that, we have an influx of information now. Every child has access to whatever is going on in the internet around the world. And those things influence that child more than what they are taught in school and more than what they are taught in their families. So if we don't up our game in what that child hears in school and in our families, then of course, what they hear through their phone is going to be what dictates their behavior and modifies their behavior. So it is actually a good thing, but it is a good thing for the purpose of what it can achieve within its mandate. And there I feel that, yes, if that is what it's going to do, that commission is going to look at how we make these things, the values and morals, more important in the curriculum and heighten them and have side programs where people can be participating in activities and youth can go on holiday camps. And in fact, I have often said myself, one of the most important medicines also is to have a compulsory military service for people between the ages of 18 and 27. And that will also instill discipline in them as well. We will not have a situation where, the trainees will tell the commanders that this exercise is too difficult. Please, let's do an easier one. That will can do. As JJ will say, who born dog? And you're going to do that exercise, So we have to, be able to put these things in their right boxes. And I think that what is being proposed now is important in the context of infusing the society with a sense of what is right, what is good, what we all accept as common shared values, and then finding mechanisms where we can promote them in our society. Because every day in the phones that these children are holding, somebody is promoting some other agenda elsewhere, and we have to counter that.
All right,
but that is not the same thing as talking about the things we need to legislate and curb the excesses so that the demon that we have created in our partisan democracy, which has subsumed our national interests, does not take hold and tear apart even the very laws that are supposed to run the country.
Right. Okay, I want to give the last couple of minutes to Raymond Abloh, and I suppose the question here is this. Looking through this communique, who do you identify as the members of our well-intending society who are tasked with implementing these 10 points?
First, let me emphasize the point that We don't need any new group of people, organization, institution to implement or execute whichever point we have put down. We don't. We like a situation, we keep establishing institutions and then duplicating them and giving them different names, and we don't get anything from them. And for a very long time, we are wasting resources in doing this. What is the job of the Council of State? What are they supposed to do? And what is the benefit we are getting from them? As a Council of State, members are being paid with a lot of resources. But can we say for a fact that the Council of State is making any relevant contribution to decisions taken by the executive, and they are helping the executive to be able to come up with the moral values and push society the way we need to do? We have a Council of State there. We don't even know what we are doing with them. The Council of State is there, and all the mess we are seeing, all the moral degradation we are seeing is taking place. But these are men who are old men and old women who have so much experience, who are supposed to counsel the president and then counsel parliament and help us to be able to move in the right direction as a nation. We have the NCCE there, which are supposed to be resourced. So why are we asking ourselves that we need to establish a body to implement and communicate, giving it a name integrity? That's not changed anything. Right. We have the institutions there which need to be effectively and sufficiently resourced to be able to do their jobs. We know what is right. We are not doing it. For instance, if an organization is forced, is a new organization we are going to form, going to instill discipline in the president better than the Council of State is doing or is unable to do? What new thing is that organization coming with? How differently is it going to execute these things? How differently? Look, we've been at this place for so long a time. So many young people have become so frustrated, they don't have hope in our leadership anymore. What we need is generational and transformational leaders. Look, all the things you're talking about, Dr. Sakara is talking about the loopholes in the Constitution. It is true that we need to tighten the Constitution or make it such that unscrupulous people will not take advantage of it when they have entrance to power. But at the same time, if the churches don't need us to establish that organization for them to be able to do their job well. The churches themselves, the leaders, the Christian leaders in this country, the religious leaders in this country themselves, they are not exhibiting the values they are talking about. So is a new integrity organization going to help them to do it in their churches? Is a new organization going to force Kusi Boateng to resign?
Yeah, it's a point well made, and I appreciate it.
What are we talking about?
Indeed. I want to say a big thank you to Raymond Ablo, a journalist and a social commentator, as well as Dr. Abu Sakara. And we appreciate your time, both of you. Okay, well, there's still more to talk about, including indiscipline in our schools. Let's tackle that after these messages.